take a live look here over the Israel-Gaza border as we continue to follow the latest out of that region. President Trump presided over a policy meeting on Israel's war in Gaza and the post-war plans. That was Wednesday, and he got input from former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and former Trump Middle East envoy Jared Kushner. That's according to a senior White House official who spoke with Reuters. Now, Trump, top White House officials, Blair and Kushner, discussed the hostage crisis, plans to escalate food aid deliveries, post-war plans, and a lot of other topics. Want to discuss this and the war itself, where everything stands? Let's bring in Seth Frantzman, an author and an adjunct fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning and provide some context.
No, thank you for having me.
Of course. And first off, I did want to ask you overall, it sounds as though we don't necessarily have a lot of information about what was discussed during this meeting. We just have maybe general topics.
Right, and that can be a good thing, because in the end of the day, the conflict is about 22 months, but the Trump administration would like to resolve this conflict just like it's sought to resolve other conflicts. And Israel is also preparing for a major battle in Gaza City, which it's going to call up around 60,000 men in order to do that. So there's a lot of things in motion, and I think it makes sense for the Trump administration to be thinking about, okay, how can we wrap this up maybe by the end of the year? And then what comes next for Gaza and for Israel and for everyone, so that this is resolved peacefully but also productively.
And I do want to pop this up on your screen really quickly here, just to kind of give a look at a post that is just coming in from the IDF. It's a lengthy post, but it says, dozens of terror targets destroyed. IDF forces continue to operate throughout the Gaza Strip against terrorist organizations. IDF forces under the Southern Command, guided by military intelligence and the Shin Bet, continue fighting against terrorist organizations throughout the Gaza Strip. In the southern part of the Strip, the combat team of the brigade operating under Division 36 eliminated several terrorists and destroyed several terror infrastructures. Simultaneously, the combat team of a Brigade 188 continues to operate in Khan Yunis with the aim of establishing operational control over that axis, which connects the eastern and western parts of the city. As you take a look at this here, it kind of reminds folks, Seth, that this is still a very active situation happening there in Gaza. Just because you're not hearing as much about it doesn't mean that it's not happening.
That's right. If we recall, for instance, there was a ceasefire that began in January that the Trump administration basically came in with, and that ceasefire fell apart in March. And after March, Israel, basically said, okay, the ceasefire is done. Either you give all the hostages back, around 50 people and 20 of whom are believed to be alive, or we're going to go in. And what Israel did from May until July is send 5 divisions into Gaza. And what you're seeing there in those is the continuation of that operation that began in May, in which Israel has retaken 75% of Gaza, and it has eliminated thousands of Hamas members. But as we can see, there's still thousands more of them, and Hamas keeps recruiting people. So it's a challenge, and it's an insurgency that has to be put down. And as you can see, the IDF brigades, infantry, and tanks continue to push forward slowly, block by block, in these areas like Khan Yunis, that it mentions there in southern Gaza, where there continue to be threats.
And I did want to ask here, are we any closer to a ceasefire deal than maybe we were a week ago, 2 weeks ago, months ago?
Well, I think, no, it's not clear, because the Trump administration has said back in July, if I recall, that they thought there would be a ceasefire deal basically for a 60-day period and then, continuation. And what Israel has said is, we don't want these drips and drabs of a few hostages here and here released. We want all the hostages back. And the Trump administration has supported that and has said that Hamas is basically obfuscating. And so I think the question is, when will Hamas finally agree, or can pressure be put on Hamas by Qatar, where there are Hamas leaders that live there, or Egypt, or other countries in the region that have influence there? And will Hamas, finally wake up and understand it's not going to survive this war? And it has to be removed from Gaza. And if it waits, there will be more casualties and more destruction. And that, I think, is not what anyone wants. The administration would prefer to wrap this up.
As we take a live look here over Jerusalem at this hour, we have all of the different live images that are coming in from that region. We also have this one showing the Israel-Gaza border. What is kind of the sticking point here for both sides? When you talk about Israel and you talk about the Hamas terror group, what is each side not necessarily willing to give up? But then on that same note, even if a ceasefire deal is reached, Hamas is a terror group. So will they stick to it?
I think Hamas has basically tried over the last several decades to start these kind of wars, massacre a bunch of people, blow up buses, kill Jews, just like they did on October 7th when they killed more than 1,000 people. And then they assume if they just sit back and hide and wait and change into civilian clothes, that eventually the international community pressures will just stop the conflict. And Hamas has done this many times in the past. And they just assume if they wait long enough, they'll get what they want. I think, Israel has other challenges. From Israel's perspective, Israel wants the hostages back. It doesn't want to end the war and have Hamas return to control Gaza. But Israel has another challenge. It has to find a way to replace Hamas as a governing authority in Gaza. And if you don't replace them, then the de facto problem is that Gaza just reverts to their control. And I think, currently we have not seen a clear plan on how Hamas could or would be replaced. And so that's also the challenge, for Israel supporters and friends like the United States and their countries to try to figure out what comes next. And there's rumors that that's being discussed, but the concrete aspect of that plan, I think, has not yet been revealed.
All right, Seth, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help break down all of the latest there. No question, there's a lot of developments pretty much on a daily basis coming in out of that region. Anything else you want to add about any of this here before I let you go?
No, I think we summarized it very well. I think the Trump administration has a real opportunity here. As the Trump administration has said, they've tried to work to, I think, solve peacefully 7 conflicts, or 6 or 7 around the world. So this is another conflict that they could try to get a goal completed by the end of the year, because that would be a year of the administration since the last ceasefire. But obviously, bringing home those hostages is a key, and I think it can be done. But it's going to be difficult.
All right. Thank you again for taking the time to join us. We appreciate it.